All right, everybody. After some technical difficulties, we finally have Christopher Lockett on the podcast. Welcome.
Hello, thank you.
It's good to have you. Thanks for coming on. Michael Hayes introduced me to you. He sent me your phone number, and we chatted a little bit. And I kind of wanted to get a little introduction out of you, and kind of just tell us about what you do.
Uh, hmm.
You do a lot of
I'm
things.
I do a lot of things. Yeah. Some people I get scolded every now and then, like, why does your website have music and film and photography? It's like because I do music and film and photography. I can't divide myself up. So and I find that one thing informs the other. So I just keep going with it. But yeah, I'm my day job, the thing that pays the bills is I'm a cinematographer. I'm a local 600 camera operator here in Hollywood, and I work on TV shows. You've seen a lot of reality TV shows to pay the bills. And then I do independent stuff on when I'm not shooting those. Did a documentary about people digging up landmines in Cambodia. Did a landmine or documentary about people who love repair and use typewriters in the 21st century. Did a documentary about a guy who tried to be a pro wrestler. Did a documentary about waterfalls of the Southern Appalachian Mountains. Currently working on a new project, music videos. I've just recently recorded my 5th album, and I'm going to release that later this summer. So I got to start shooting some music videos for it. And then, I've been a still photographer since the early 90s, at least. I don't know when I guess I started in 91. So I've been at all these things for a while.
So in Cambodia, did you I'm assuming you actually went to Cambodia.
Oh yeah, a couple times. Well, 3, 4 times.
Did you film any of the landmines? What's this documentary called?
It's called Until They're Gone. It's about people who dig up landmines. There's a guy named Akira, who was a former Khmer Rouge child soldier, who, when he was a kid, the Khmer Rouge basically had people living in like family reassignment work camps. Like the way the Khmer Rouge did things was they took the American bombings. We were bombing the rural routes. If you look at Cambodia, it kind of does a dog leg. It's like a reverse New Jersey shape. And the Ho Chi Minh Trail would run through rural Cambodia, rural eastern Cambodia, from North Vietnam to South Vietnam. And so the North Vietnamese army, who we were fighting in the Vietnamese War, the Vietnam War, would run a supply line through there, and we would bomb that. And that drove people out of the countryside to Phnom Penh and Siem Reap and, the couple big cities there.
So the
And
U.S. government would put the landmines on the supply road
no, we would
through,
actually bomb them because we
oh,
weren't,
just like launch bombs at them.
yeah, drop them from big B-29s because
Okay.
Cambodia was officially neutral,
Hmm.
even though there was a border war raging on its border. So we bombed the Ho Chi Minh Trail. The people moved to the cities. The Khmer Rouge came in and said, do you want to stop the American bombings? Come join us, and we'll overthrow our own government who's partnered with the Americans. And so in 1975, the Khmer Rouge came in, said the Americans are coming, you got to get out of the cities, and drove everybody out of the cities, like 2.7 million people in Phnom Penh, and they drove them out of the cities into the arms of Khmer Rouge labor camps. And they said, you wear glasses. And they're like, yeah. It's like, well, clearly you're an intellectual. That doesn't work anymore. They would execute you. Then they would execute people who didn't have calluses, because that wasn't like, the communist working man kind of thing. So there was something like only 4 doctors left in the country
Wow.
after a 4-year reign of terror. They killed at least 1.7 million people in a country of 8 million. It's
Wow.
absolute insanity. And so
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that many people know about that because this is the first time I'm even hearing about that. So,
well, there's a good
um,
movie on it,
yeah,
The Killing Fields, and that's what
killing fields.
yeah, there's a museum in Phnom Penh. Chong Ek is the local name for it, but it's Killing Fields Museum, and there are like 144 mass graves there.
Wow.
And they only excavated like 40 of them. And if you go there after a rain, you can see bits of clothing and a jawbone coming through the dirt. Um, there's a school, a
Wow.
former school there that the name is S21. It was a killing machine prison. There's something like 14,000 people that were murdered there. And they used the old French system where they would take a photograph of the condemned, a profile and their face. And I don't know if they're doing like, what was it called? Phrenology, studying like the skull shapes to see who's a sociopath or any of that debunked science, pseudoscience.
Yeah.
Um, but um, but there are lots and lots of photos, and that school is preserved as a memorial to the people who died, and it's horrific to go there. They left some of the stuff like the way they found it. So so when those wars were over, because this Khmer Rouge is 75 to 79, the Vietnamese invaded, and there was a border war with the Vietnam, and then civil war internal. And it wasn't until early 90s that the UN did something they'd never done before. They totally took over the government and stabilized it. And, for better or worse, Hun Sen, the recently resigned or retired prime minister, he was a Khmer Rouge guy, but he was in power from 1985, and he's passed on the country to his son, and that's a whole
Yeah.
other argument. But the point is, all these landmines are there. We didn't put hardly any of the landmines there, but we really destabilized the country. We backed Lon Nol in
Yeah.
a coup, and it's one of the guys in the film, Dr. David Chandler, testified at the Khmer Rouge tribunal, where they put some of these people who were responsible for murdering so many of their own countrymen on trial. He said, we're not only to blame, but we are also to blame. And we are.
Mm.
And so Akira is doing penance. He's a 2010 CNN hero. He goes out and digs up landmines, and he's taught a bunch of people to do it. And there's an American guy. I needed like an entrance point to the story that a Western audience could relate to.
Mm-hmm.
And Bill Morse and his wife they left their comfortable retirement down in Palm Springs to eventually move there. And they still live there. They've lived there for like 14, 15 years now.
Wow.
And their full-time job is raising money for a team of deminers to go out and still dig up landmines. And in the meantime, they've started developing rural school programs. So it just felt like, wow, that is a damn interesting job. That's a damn dangerous
Yeah.
job.
Yeah, that's really dangerous. I mean, have you filmed them digging
Oh
up
yeah.
one?
Oh yeah. The film, you can actually see it on YouTube with commercials,
Okay.
and you can see it on
Yep.
Tubi and Google Play and Apple TV and bunch of stuff.
Okay.
But yeah, you're not allowed to put the camera in the eye line of somebody digging, because that's a distraction. But it's 110 degrees, and we're wearing like an umpire level body armor plus a helmet with this thick plexiglass, blast shield. And you're sweating your ass off, and
Yeah.
it distorts your field of vision when you're trying to shoot. But you can only shoot from behind or from a distance, and they dig them up, and they dig them up by hand. Everybody knows now about the rats. The rats don't dig them up. The rats sniff out the TNT, and then a person marks where it is.
Wow.
Then a person has to go dig it up. People think they just send rats out and rats dig up bombs. It doesn't work that way. So,
Yeah, I
and
mean, I didn't
then
even know about the rap part.
it made headlines a couple of years ago, and people are like, oh, the problem solved. And it's like, no, you got to read past the headline. The problem is that's another tool. And like there are all these different tools. Like people know about World War II era and World War I era flails, where you send a tank over a field and you got chains just whipping the field,
Yep.
blowing stuff up. And it blows up the chain, and you replace the chain and you move on. But those are battlefields in Europe, like classical style.
Yep.
Now you've got 40 going on 50 years more of triple canopy jungle. It's really impossible to get these things out. Sometimes they have to go in and burn the field then go uh, mine sweep it with two different types of metal detectors. There's another metal detector. There's a metal detector, like you see the old guy at the beach, or
Yep.
at a Civil War battlefield or something.
Hmm.
Then there's the one that penetrates much deeper, and that'll tell you where there's like an anti-tank mine. And
Okay.
in the film, we talked about how that became a problem because as the developing economy of Cambodia got bigger, farmers were finally able to get credit. So a young man in the family in a rural area, and it's usually a man doing the rural farm work
Yep.
stuff, still in most countries, for this kind of stuff, would take out a loan, get a tractor, and he could walk over that landmine because it takes a high amount of pressure to blow it up.
Yep.
But when the tractor goes over it, it's a much bigger charge. It's meant to blow up a tank and not a soldier. So can you hear the alarm or the siren? LA's being LA right now.
They're coming for you.
Yeah. um, but it'll blow up the tractor. They'll kill or maim the
Okay.
young man, and the family's mired in instant debt with no ability to get that money back, or pay off that debt. So it's an ongoing problem in rural areas. And, Pol Pot, the leader of the Khmer Rouge, responsible for all that death and mayhem, he said the landmine is a perfect soldier. You don't have to water it, you don't have to feed it, you don't have to let it have a vacation. It stays on the job after the war's over, and it just kills.
So these landmines, because I mean, you already answered a question that I was going to ask you. They detonate with weight. So,
Yeah.
like, if there's a large amount of weight, like the weight of a tractor, say,
Mm-hmm.
or a car,
Or a
then
person.
it explodes. Oh,
Yep.
or a person.
Yeah, there are there's two chief kinds of mines. There's anti-personnel and there's anti
Okay, okay.
vehicle. And they're designed to kill. Well, they're actually not designed to kill. They're designed to maim. Because if you kill a soldier, you leave him in the field and go get him when the battle's over. If
Hmm.
you maim him, you've got to have two people to drag him out of the field. So you slow an army down. And that's fine, I guess. It's not fine, but it's a tool of war and has been a tool of war up until the 1999 International Landmine Ban Treaty. Um, but when a kid picks it up, a kid is much lower to the ground. And in the film, a doctor explains what happens. He said, okay, you're lower to the ground. So imagine you have like a long Christmas wrapping tube,
Hmm.
right? And you stick it in someone's mouth and you go into their lungs, and their lungs inflate and then deflate quickly. And it causes so much inflammation that people will drown in the fluid from the violence of it. So it kills children, it kills goats, it kills oxen, it blows up tractors. You don't know where they are because a lot of times they're plastic bodies, they're sealed, they last 40, 50. There's still areas in France from World War One, which ended in what, 1918, that are still off limits
Wow.
because they didn't clear those areas. I mean, these things stay dangerous for a long time. And
Wow.
like there's you know I'm not a big fan of superhero movies because I like to live my life a little closer to actual reality personally.
Yeah.
But one of
Yeah.
the definition of a hero is somebody who does something for someone they'll never even meet or not receive a direct benefit from.
Hmm.
Um, and to me, it's heroic what these guys are doing. And women do this job too. They're trying to make their country safer. And
Hmm.
in early 2022, four people, it's Cambodian self-help demining. They're a U.S. base because of Bill Morse's U.S. citizenship. They're a U.S. based 501c3 nonprofit. So you can hit their website and you can donate there, and they have all the, yeah, you go to Charity Navigator and look at their financial records and all that stuff. But they for the people that are in the film were blown up, and three of them died instantly. And one of the guys, somebody had mishandled an anti-tank mine. It was very early 2022. And one of the guys who survived uh, got into demining because he lost half an arm and an eye when he was a child. And so he survived two landmine explosions now.
Wow.
And it's, you know, the amount of money they do it for, uh, because our world runs and, on money.
Yep.
And I grew up, middle to upper middle class. So I always want to know if I can afford something. It's like, can I do that? What does that cost? How does my contribution help?
Yep.
They're doing it for like $250 a month US, which are good wages there, but it's still $250 a month.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
It's
know,
like
you
that's not that much.
you
In the
couldn't find
US,
any.
that's yeah.
Yeah. I mean, would you get on your hands and knees wearing body armor, have to take a bunch of training, and sit there with a prodding stick, find the landmine, dig it up? And sometimes, like the classic
Yep.
movie grenade that looks like a little pineapple with the ridges on it.
Yep.
Sometimes they'll have one of those and it's on a stick, and you pull that, but the stick has a wire going to a landmine 2 feet away. So some of these things are booby trapped, and the stuff's still there. And
Yeah,
you
that's like really sketchy.
yeah. And one of the things I learned, like, I'm no expert on this stuff. Like
Yep.
I'm just basically quoting people who are in the film who are the experts.
Hmm.
Um, the After World War II, all the nations of Europe got together and said, we got to get these landmines out. They're in battlefields, they're on
Yep.
beaches. And they did, because it was Europe and they had money and they had American assistance, and they did it. But in these, in Colombia, in Egypt, Egypt had at one point something like 23 million mines left over from World War II.
Wow.
Colombia has them, Angola had them, Cambodia has them, Laos has them. And the other thing, like I said, we dropped bombs. 20% of what we dropped never exploded. And we dropped something like 439,000 tons of bombs between 1965 and 1973. That's more than we dropped on Japan in World War II. And Cambodia is a nation we were never at war with. So if 20% of 400,000, 439,000 tons never exploded, it's 100,000 tons of bombs sitting there.
Yeah, I
So
mean, I honestly just think it's incredible that if they're just sitting there, that the U.S. government hasn't gone and picked them up.
no, we don't. There, if you look at any Pentagon budget, and they're pretty opaque, you can't get these numbers.
Mhm.
There's never a line item for war cleanup. Doesn't exist. Just leave it and move on. And if you have friends who are veterans, you talk about Afghanistan, you talk about Iraq, they would sometimes make sure that some of our military secrets, like design technology, didn't get into other people's hands.
Yeah.
Rather than ship the stuff back here, which we did some of that stuff, sometimes they would just blow things up in place.
Wow.
You know, so it's, wars are, I mean, if landmines from World War One and bombs from World War One are still active, and they're still leaching arsenic into the groundwater in rural areas of
Mhm.
France, I mean, we got to do better, man.
Yeah.
And that's the reason why I make a film like that.
Yeah.
The title comes from a conversation that Bill Morse had with Akira, and he said, "Well, how long do you plan on digging up landmines?" And he said, "Until they're gone." And it's like, yeah, there's the title right there.
Until they're
And
gone.
it's one of those things, like you have a talk with your Hollywood executives, the suits, right?
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
they want to know, because who wants a massive challenge with everything? They don't want to
Yeah.
reinvent the wheel. They have a vertically
Hmm.
integrated pipeline of distribution, and I get it. But they'll say to you, okay, what other film is this like that we can market like? And it's like, it's not. No, people aren't telling this story of people who are digging up. We told the Killing Field story. It won an Oscar. It won a lot of Oscars. It's a very well known film.
Hmm.
But that what wasn't over then.
Yeah.
That's a couple people's story in the narrative, the scripted narrative of the film, but there are tons and tons of stories of histories of people digging this stuff up and dealing with the aftermath, and those stories aren't told. And it's hard for somebody who's just trying to move money around to keep the money machine rolling to
Yep.
think this is my take on it, to think on the level that it takes to take a story that isn't being told. And that's where documentaries, I think, are worth their existence, but they're so hard to get funded.
Yep.
If you go to funding organizations or you go to grants, there's months and months and months of decision making, and you don't have months. Sometimes you just got to move, you got to go,
Yeah.
you know so it is inherently frustrating if you don't have deep pockets,
Mhm.
and inherently challenging if you do.
But I mean, that's kind of where YouTube becomes like the modern day miracle because, anyone can post anything and your documentary can be out there um and
it
easily
it
accessible to
is
anyone. Right.
it is but how do you get your money back in terms
Yeah.
of, because I
Yeah.
flew a crew over to Cambodia 3 times, and I went 2 more times myself.
Yeah,
You
because
know,
that's got to be like over $10,000 probably, like at
just
least.
just in that, you know,
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
then the
just in that.
gear, and I mean the food is there. It is inexpensive. The hotels are inexpensive. Permits don't really
Yeah.
exist.
Yeah.
The people took very good care of us and showed us everything in the process, and I got a lot of great stuff.
Hmm.
But it's just, if people don't know about the story, uh, you know uh, distribution is weird.
Yeah.
Distribution is kind of a stranglehold. The streamers have, honestly, I mean, you used to have the gatekeepers at the
Hmm.
the distribution companies, but
Yeah.
the streamers, the floodgates are open, but um they don't market anything for you. They don't do, it's just
Hmm.
there. They're just kind of hosts,
Hmm.
and the
Yeah.
distributors, there are only a
Yeah.
handful of them that'll really, push really hard. I mean, there's just so many options. It's hard for people
Yeah.
to pay attention. And
Yeah.
does it really affect anybody? If you're, I mean, you're in, where are you right now? You're in
In Idaho.
Idaho.
Yeah.
Is there a large Khmer or Cambodian population there, the way there is in Long Beach out here?
No.
I mean, there's a thing. If you look at a TV
Yeah.
show, um,
Yep.
say it's a cop show,
Yep.
and not to go down the rabbit hole stereotypes, but
Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
if there's a cop show, there's going to be donuts, and if the donut box
Yeah.
is pink, uh, and the cop show was set in New York, then the production designer and set decorator screwed up, because the only place you have pink donut boxes is in LA. And why you have that is because most of the donut shops that aren't chain donut shops are run by Khmer people. There's a guy, his nickname was the Donut King, who used to work at Winchell's Donuts, a West Coast thing. Um, and he went out on his own and started sponsoring families to come over and franchise donut shops and open
Oh,
their own
wow.
shops. And the traditional Khmer color of mourning is white. Like, we wear white to weddings.
Yep.
Chinese wear red to weddings. You wouldn't wear a red wedding dress in America generally. So they didn't care for white on these boxes. And people who had survived all the killing fields of the Khmer Rouge era said, we need a more joyful color. And they found a guy who made pink donut boxes. And they're very unique to LA. They're a pink unwaxed donut box.
Oh,
Um,
interesting.
and so if you look at a cop show and it's set in New York, but they pull out a pink donut box, it's like, you shot it in LA and you faked it and you didn't do your research. Um,
Is that something you learned
but
while filming this
I
documentary?
actually I actually knew that before, because I'm a
Okay.
big guy. I like donuts, and
Okay.
the when I go to donut shops, it's like, oh, Cambodian people, cool. Um, there's like most of the nail salons out here are Vietnamese run, Vietnamese and Thai, and there's a story that comes from that, when they had the Vietnamese boat people, the boat lifts of refugees, and they were all north of Sacramento here in California. Tippi Hedren, the actress, Melanie Griffith's mom, Tippi Hedren was in The Birds. She was kind of I don't know if she was like a goodwill ambassador for the UN or what it was, but she went up to visit, and they all loved her nails, and she thought, huh, women need to work in this culture.
Mhm.
I wonder if I could get them trained as nail techs and they could open nail salons. And that's literally where it comes from. And it's most of the nail salons here are Southeast Asian. Just like there's a great documentary called The Donut King about that guy, the Khmer guy who brought over tons and tons of Cambodians and set them up in business.
Wow.
Um, but yeah, it's I mean, so it has an application here. You might notice it if you go in and actually talk to the people you're buying donuts from. I don't know that this story really impacts people outside of, say, Lowell, Massachusetts, and Long Beach, California, which has a Cambodia town. But I think it's a story worth telling anyway.
Yep. So you're a guy who you love learning about other people's stories. Is that kind of why you film, or what? How did you get into filming and doing documentary work?
It's probably being a kid growing up in the South and listening to old people tell stories. When a few years back, I don't know, 2016 or so, I saw John Prine, one of my favorite singer-songwriters, and he sadly died of COVID. Um, and he has a song called Hello in there, which is about like the loneliness and isolation of elderly people. And he said, yeah, when I was a kid, I'd hang around and listen to the old people because they had all stories. They had all the stories. All my friends ever wanted to do is go to the creek and throw rocks at frogs. I've been there, done that. Because the old people had all the good stories, and he's like, that's what I wanted to be someday, old and full of stories. And I was like, yeah, I totally get that. and you know, I have a fairly decent memory, so I can recall a lot of this stuff. And there's plenty of stuff from my own life that I don't mind telling stories from. But um, you know, there's an argument. I've had this discussion with other journalists, and I used to be a journalist. I'll get to that in a sec.
Hmm.
But the you know there comes a time when people ask you like, what
Yeah.
gives you the right to tell this story? Why are you the one to tell the story? And there's training and there's certain skills and certain abilities and all that other stuff. But I think the thing you have to do a lot as a journalist or a documentarian is know it's not about you at all,
Hmm.
but I don't find it that hard to go, oh, what would I do in this situation?
Yep.
And I don't think we do that enough as Americans, especially. There's a whole lot of like I mean, God damn it, man. Every time sorry, I don't know if I'm allowed to cuss on this, but
Oh yeah.
I
Yeah,
usually,
you are.
okay, I usually cuss like a son of a bitch, but, I look at a friggin' recipe on Instagram and I'm like,
Mm.
oh God, do I want to click on the comments? Because that's not the way you do XYZ ABC. You're a rotten person because you put that ingredient in this. And it's like, oh, Jesus, man, easy. Um,
It's like, how
and
about
I
you
don't know.
try it then, dude? Come on.
Yeah, I mean,
Come on,
it's
try
like
it.
I could look at the recipe and go, yeah, I don't want to. I don't like that spice. I'm not gonna put that in there. I'll just change that up and do this. Or I mean, just like what any home cook does, you may not have it in your kitchen the night you're making but it's like people love them some walls and rigid stuff. There's a line from a Russian poet I like, Yevgeny Yevtushenko, and he says, "He born to a box weeps for want of a box." I don't like boxes. I don't like fences, you know. But I understand now with cultural sensitivity. I'm an overfed, over 6 foot tall, white American, and when I'm traipsing through a village in Guatemala, I'm 100 pounds heavier and a foot taller than everybody.
Yep.
And there are benefits of that. Like the little boys, like Cristobal, eres un luchador? Are you a wrestler? Kids wearing like a Stone Cold Steve Austin
Yeah.
shirt in a Mayan village in Guatemala. I'm like, see, soy un luchador. And I got two little boys on my shoulder wrestling, and that's fun. But certainly scare the crap out of a little Mayan girl who's like, I've never seen a white man that big, Jesus. So
Yeah.
you do little things like you turn off the tally light on the front of your camera so it's not a red blinking thing in their face, and you get down on their level. And but to directly answer the question, I was an English major in undergrad,
Okay.
and I needed to justify that, so I started writing a lot of music
Yeah.
reviews
Hmm.
because I am a musician. I know some things about it. A lot of those magazines relied on unpaid reviewers. So I quickly built up a thing, got hired on at the Atlanta Journal Constitution in my early 20s. And when I applied for a job in a suburban bureau closer to where I lived in Atlanta, they said, "Oh, wait, did you say you're a photographer?" It's like, "Yeah." And they're like, I brought my portfolio in case you want to see it. And they're like, "Yeah, because we need somebody, we can't
Yep.
always get a photographer out from the downtown bureau." So, so I was shooting my own stories. And then they did a thing. They with the coming of the '96 Olympics, we had been a black and white newspaper. Then they changed to a color section front, and then back in the old days, you would start a story if it was a long story and you had like 25 column inches or something, right? And it would start off, say, above the fold, the paper folds. So above the fold is like, that's great placement because people will see it. They
Yep.
don't even have to turn the paper over to see your
Hmm.
article. So say you're above the fold, but it's a long article. And you would start off talking about landmines in Cambodia. Then it would say at the bottom of, the thing, CA10. So you open up section A to 10 and the article continues. That's called a jump. So they started because we had a bunch of people who came over from USA Today and they were modernizing our paper. They started no jump fronts. So I was writing shorter and shorter and shorter articles, and you can only shorten it so far. And it
Yep.
was literally for the shortening attention spans. And I made some joke is like, is it true that our paper is written for a sixth grade reading level? And they said, no, third. And I was like, are you fucking kidding me? And they're like, no, no, third grade reading level, because the kid who's sitting there with his mom wants to know. It's like, are you shitting me? And they're like, nope. And I was like, okay. So
It's
I
like
was
kids don't read the newspaper. Come on.
30 years ago they may have, but even then it was doubtful. So they,
Yeah.
um, and when I finally gave up, um,
Hmm.
and I resigned 3 months later, I
Yep.
went down to South Georgia because Mo Tucker, the drummer for the Velvet Underground, Lou Reed's band,
Hmm.
John Cale, just legends in it. And the story everybody knows, or the line a lot of people know about Velvet Underground, is they only sold 1,000 copies, which they sold more, but they only sold 1,000 copies of their albums. But everybody who bought an album went out and started their own band, hugely influential band, right? And they were being inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And Mo Tucker, I mean, they were part of Andy Warhol's Factory and that whole scene.
Okay.
Famous to this day, influential to this day. Um, but Mo Tucker went through a divorce and lived down in South Georgia, and she was a bookkeeper for a Walmart regional like super center, or like a corporate center. And she needed a job, and I think her parents may have lived down there or something. But so I was in her kitchen while she's chain smoking, cigarettes all day, and I photographed her, and she's got an 8x10 black and white of Bo Diddley on the mantelpiece, and Lou Reed calls in to make sure she has her train tickets to get up to Cleveland for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And it's like, this is awesome. I was loving it. And I lost the section front to a quilting bee because it had more color. And
Really.
I gotta get out of journalism. This is shit. Um, I can't tell the stories as in depth as I want to. I'm
Yeah.
I'm even being throttled back on the visual storytelling, and it's like,
Hmm.
damn it, this is important, it's like REM, if there's no Velvet Underground, REM from Athens, Georgia would not have existed. Tons of bands wouldn't have existed without Velvet Underground. And a quilting bee is on the cover because it's more colorful.
You still have
And
those photos?
oh yeah, yeah. What I I was so annoyed with the paper that I knew this is probably telling on myself, but at this point, I don't care. I knew I was going to resign, and I said, "Hey, I
Yep.
need to print a new portfolio, so I'd like to have all my negatives so I can scan them." And they're like, "Okay." So they gave me my negatives, and then I resigned. So I still have them all. um, yeah,
I mean, you
you
can
know.
use those. You could write an article online. I
Oh,
think that'd be
sure,
pretty cool. Yeah, you could like
sure.
go on Substack or whatever,
I thought about
put your old
Substack,
photos on there.
but
That'd be
it
cool.
but by 1996, after doing journalism for a few years, I was just like, I like films better. I like cinema. I think
Yep. Yep.
the depth of the storytelling in the cinema that I prefer, that I like, they're not popcorn films. I love a good blow 'em up, shoot 'em up as
Yep.
escapist entertainment as much as the next guy,
Yep.
but it can't be my whole diet.
Yep. Yep.
I don't,
Exactly.
I think it's actually unhealthy, but entire careers have been made on superhero things. So, I'm definitely out of step with that. But that's what I did. I went off to a film school and got more training. And they're like, "You're a big guy, so you can carry sandbags and heavy stands. So you're in grip and lighting." So I learned grip and lighting because I already knew how to shoot. I knew photography inside and out. So did that for a while, and then got on to camera operating. And then in 2000, I applied to and got into the MFA cinematography program at American Film Institute. And I said, "Well, if I don't like LA, I can come back to the South." And I got out here and I said, "What? No humidity, no mosquitoes? I'm staying." So I've been out here since 2000.
Wow. Yeah, it's crazy. So you've just been filming, just getting in documentary after documentary, basically, and
It
reality
varies.
TV.
The reality stuff came along because Hollywood's very cliquish. You got
Yep.
your crews, and some crews go film to film to film. The thing that held me back a lot was having massive student loan debt from the masters.
Yep.
And it's
Oh,
worse
I'm sure.
now. You know, there's
Mm.
you ever read David Byrne's book, How Music Works?
I have not.
Highly recommend it. He has starts off with this thesis about, people will say that Pavarotti would have been Pavarotti, Mozart would have been Mozart, no matter where they were born in time. And he says that's absolute garbage. Because if you take jazz, which is played almost exclusively in small clubs and it has a lot of key changes, measure to measure to measure, if
Mhm.
you tried to play that in a European cathedral that had a 3-second decay of sound hitting the back wall and coming back to you, it would sound like mud. It would pile up. If you took African
Yep.
polyrhythmic drums that are traditionally played outside with no, reflectance off walls, it would sound like mud.
Yep.
Culture absolutely informs the music that people make. And he has a chapter in there talking about what makes a scene. And he said that when he was in starting the band, the Talking Heads, he split a crappy loft in Alphabet City, New York, that was $150 a month, split 3 ways. And he said, yeah, of course, somebody would take a dump in the lobby, and they turn the heat off in New York winter, but I only needed $50 a month to keep a roof over my head. I could afford to be a full-time artist. So what do you do when the wages are stagnant and you've got a one-bedroom apartment that's $3,500 a month?
Yep.
How do you create art? I mean, and I think, like, when I went to AFI, it was 18,000 and 19,500 for the 2 years I was there. Now it's like 39,000. And the only thing you're going to get is either somebody's lucky enough to get some scholarships, or you're going to get trust fund art. You know,
Yep.
and I think that's a real shame. I mean, AFI has to survive like anything else. I'm not really knocking that, but it's
Art is created through struggle, you know.
it
So
it can be, it can be rich kids with an internal struggle. I think everything is just as valid for them as people who are trying
yep.
to just keep a roof over their head. I'm
Yep.
not denying, that everybody's struggle is different.
Hmm.
And you can make art out of comfort too. You can find things that are
Yep.
just
You can.
decorative and sublime. But I think when the like if you look at poetry, what's your barrier to entry? It's pretty democratic. Do you have a pencil? Yeah. Do you have a paper? Yeah. Get started.
Yep. Yep. Exactly.
But the downside of that is there's a glut of really bad poets. you know
Mhm.
there is something to be said for the gatekeepers at a skill level and that sort of thing, to maintain some things. You know, there are no accidental Beethovens. Punk rock's great. I absolutely love it. But if you're going to try and play, you know, Moonlight Sonata, you better know how to play. If you're going to play Giant Steps with John Coltrane, you better know how to play. But I would just as happily listen to what the hell? Sorry, I'm getting a commercial in my ear. Hang on. Sorry. What the hell is that? Wow. Okay, sorry. I hit a button. You still there?
Oh yeah, I'm here.
Okay. Sorry about that. Hit a button
You're
on
good.
my AirPod. Um little Jimmy Dale Gilmore flooded in my ears. But if the barrier to entry is a staggering amount of money and a lifetime of debt, I paid back, $80,000 in loans. And that I was paying $600 a month for almost 20 years. It was actually over 80,000, principal and interest. And that's a real hardship.
Yep.
My pockets were never that deep. So the
So
reality,
do you
I
think
could,
it's
I,
good that there's a gatekeeper, that there is a money barrier to, like, there's a price for entry into your field?
it, it's getting lower. And I think that democratizes the medium. And I think the places where it's growing and the stories take bigger risks are at the lower financial entry points. Where it suffers is in the high technical craft. Um, it depends, to answer the question directly, it depends on the type of gatekeeper. If everybody's got to go into 80,000, I mean, look at it. Let's look at American education in general.
Yep.
At age 18, you've either got to have a great relationship with your parents have to have money, you have to be
Yeah.
independently wealthy, or you have to be willing and have the family backing, because you can't get all this on your own, to assume massive amounts of debt, or limit yourself to a school that people will look at a pile of resumes and go, nope. So, I'm not a communist and barely a socialist. I mean, I like things like public school, and I like things like roads and public,
Yeah.
the public estate. They're things that we do collectively better, but the barrier is too high for a lot of
Yeah, I
this
mean, I
stuff.
think everyone can agree that the student loan debt is like terrible. It's
And
it's way too high.
there are people who, are like, I had to fight on the GI Bill and get my ass shot at. And
Yeah.
yeah, I think they have a beef.
Mhm.
But, but, you know, the amount of interest you're paying in student loan because it's a non-competitive program, that stuff is garbage. Um, there's a whole lot of, we don't like layers in public
Mhm.
debates anymore. We
Yep.
like lock
This or
her up,
that.
you know,
Mhm.
you're wrong, lock her up, drain the swamp. We can't get past 3 words. 3 word slogans
Yeah.
kind of rule our politics. There's not much nuance in 3 word slogans. That's why they
No.
work. But um, you know, I, I wish I wish an American audience would embrace subtitles, would embrace black and white, would expand their palette. I
Yeah.
don't know how to get them to do it. I've been trying literally my whole life to get people to give a shit about some of these independent projects. And, the opening weekend of a superhero movie is going to smoke everything I make in my entire career. And it's a little depressing, but it's just the reality of it that McDonald's
Yeah.
cheeseburgers, which anybody who's ever cooked a good backyard burger knows is not the pinnacle of food products
Yep.
uh,
Yep.
in the burger sphere,
Exactly.
but they're familiar enough that they will sell in the billions And I don't, I wish we could get out of that. That marketed mediocrity is I think that's what it is. It's just marketed mediocrity. It's convenient and people have enough on their plate. And
Yeah,
I
and
don't,
I believe Nietzsche once said that whatever the herd likes or whatever is loved by millions is usually mediocre or
yeah,
something along those
yeah.
lines, right?
I mean, it's low risk.
It's low risk.
It's like it's not at the tails of the bell curve. It's the big fat middle. You know, and if
Yeah,
you're a money guy and you're trying to maximize return on income and return on investment, yeah, I mean that's where you're going to want to live, but that's not really what art wants to be. You know, uh, if all I mean, there's hotel room art, there's wallpaper, there's
mm,
lithographs of famous art, but people
yeah,
won't buy the art. You
yeah,
know, I know people who, when they go on the road for various things, whether they're shooting, it's a road show, or they're on tour. There's some people I know who will only go to the national chains, and I absolutely try not to. Uh, I have
yeah,
plenty of McDonald's breakfast coursing through my veins because
yeah.
they're open and I can drive through and have a breakfast. But why what is it in our national character that stops us from exploring some of the more interesting stuff we make?
Yeah, if I, like I do not like going to chain restaurants. Like maybe if I'm drunk, I want to order like McDonald's,
Yeah,
but but like if I'm at a new place, I'll want to experience something new that I've never had before, right?
yeah.
Unless it's maybe Starbucks, when I wake up in the morning, maybe I want to just get Starbucks 'cause it's right
Mhm.
there. But yeah, I mean, I'll always want to experience something new, you know?
I wish people had more of that spirit. um
Hmm.
I like going to places that aren't your typical big vacation destinations. I've been to London,
Yep.
I've been to Paris,
Hmm.
love those places. They are what they are. Been to Dublin. I'm probably going to Scotland here a little bit.
Yeah.
But I have gotten moments where I've just like sat at a watering hole in South Africa and watched
Yeah.
37 elephants water the whole herd for an
Yeah.
hour.
Yeah, you don't see
I've
that on TV. I mean, like that's not something you see on TV. You see Big Ben on TV. You see all that stuff
mhm.
on TV. You see the Eiffel Tower. You see all that. But you're not going to see 37 elephants in your life unless you're there.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I miss about Anthony Bourdain. He would
Hmm.
say it's like, why are Americans afraid of the food cart? Nobody stays in business very long, poisoning their neighbors.
Yeah.
Go to the food cart. I mean, that shot of him and Obama sitting on plastic chairs in that restaurant in Vietnam
Yeah.
having pho. It's like, yeah, right on. It was like, and just
It's always the best
exploring.
food at like the food
Yeah,
trucks. Like we
yeah,
went to this place in Hawaii. I think it was called the Bald Guy,
uh-huh.
and
It's a great name.
there was this. Oh my gosh, we had the best like garlic shrimp thing. It was so good. Then we ate at this other food truck, and we had more shrimp. It was amazing. Those were better than all the places we ate in Oahu, like near the resort and everything.
Yeah,
It was
we
delicious.
we had a food writer out here in LA, Jonathan Gold, and he's passed away, but he won a Pulitzer for his writing about food. And at the time, he wasn't writing at the LA Times; he was writing in the LA
Mhm.
Weekly, which is like the DC City paper or New York's Village Voice or the Boston Phoenix, like the free alt news weeklies that are disappearing. But his thing was not like, yeah, let's go to this expensive restaurant in Beverly
Yeah,
Hills. He's like, I heard there's this great, Korean fried chicken place that just opened. Let's try that. I had no idea about Korean fried chicken, before I moved out here. And, you know, and, it's like, where I grew up, I'm about to turn 56 in the 70s in my hometown of Virginia. Mexican food was like a hard shell taco, maybe a refried bean and some ground beef.
Yeah.
And I'm out here in a city where it's like, oh, that guy does Guadalajara style goat, and that guy's from Nayarit, and they're across the street from each other. They're two distant states, and that guy's great seafood, and that guy does great birria, and oh my god, I got to try that, and I got to try that, and it's affordable. In a way that the Crustacean in Beverly Hills or any of the high end places or Jelena
Yep.
and Santa Monica aren't. And I appreciate those places because they definitely put thought and
Yep.
care into their work. But you know, for people who are just doing a job and want something that ain't McDonald's, that food is brilliant. And
Yeah.
you
And
know,
I mean, it's
I but
cooked with well, like it's cooked with like a heart. You know what I mean? It's like
yeah,
it has something to it.
I mean,
In that regard.
you can taste the indifference at a Denny's, you know, versus a small town diner. And it's like this has indifference in it, you know.
Yeah, I've never heard it say like that. You can taste the indifference.
Yeah,
'Cause, I mean that perfectly describes every chain restaurant. Like you could taste the indifference.
yeah. You see the Cisco truck roll in, you're like, okay, that's frozen. I was floored. I was in this town, Joplin, Missouri, and for 6 months
Yeah.
shooting a TV show in November 2007 through May of 2008. Election year, stuff was heating up.
Yep.
Tornadoes, ice storms, all kinds of stuff. And Joplin was hit really hard 3 years later by a major tornado. And it was driving me crazy because it was one of those main strips where you pull off the interstate and there's the Long John Silver's in the same building as the Taco Bell across the street from the Walmart and the Home Depot, but nothing really local.
Yep.
And it was driving me a little crazy trying to find the barbecue joints were okay. That was good.
Mhm.
That got me through. Chinese buffet got me through. But in back then Yelp wasn't really that big a thing, but I
No.
found some local German woman who has a farm, and attached to her horse barn is a four top table, so a 24-seater German restaurant. You're gonna laugh at the name. It's Roswitha's Schnitzelbank. And so I heard about it, I read about it or something, and I called her up. I was like, "Hey, do you sell alcohol?" She goes, "With German, yeah." I was like, "Okay, of course, yeah, yeah, beer, duh." I think I offended her, but I went there and I was like, Jesus, this is great. And we had a couple of guys on the show who drove past it every day for like
Wow.
40 years of their lives. I said, "Hey, man, you ever been to this place?" Like, what? Rose with us? What? It's like Schnitzelbank, man. And they passed it for years and years and years and never
Wow.
knew about it, never stopped. Nobody talked about it. And I don't know why curiosity scares people. It
Mhm.
bothers me deeply. But
Yeah, I mean, I think some people are just stuck in their routine, and it's like, they want to try that same thing that's good every time, or at least is okay every time. They're scared to branch out and have that risk, you know?
I mean, maybe, and I'm not, honestly, I understand it. Like,
Yeah.
the
I mean, I
comfort
think it's
of
stupid, but
the, I'm not gonna to shit on somebody who needs the comfort of
yeah,
familiar things, especially if they come from a background
yeah,
that's,
yeah,
really chaotic, and a lot of people do. So
hmm
I
yeah, exactly.
I'm not trying to judge it. I just know that
Hmm.
being curious about stuff, reading, finding
Yep,
things, um, it just to me it's way more
yep,
rewarding,
yep.
you know. But
Yeah,
and
I mean,
so
we've all been there. I mean, when I was young, I was super picky with everything. I mean, I
mhm.
totally get it.
I guess I got lucky growing up. We were 25 miles south of Washington D.C., so
Okay.
um, it was country. I grew up on a dirt road, and then it later got
Hmm.
paved.
Yep.
And DC had a lot of different stuff. Like it's
Yeah.
considered Northern Virginia, Washington DC is considered the northern terminus of most things Southern, and the southern terminus of most things Yankee or Mid Atlantic. So I could get sweet tea, but I could also, which is a Southern thing, but I could also get scrapple, which is like a Philly, Pennsylvania thing. So you got a real mix of stuff. And there are a lot
Yeah.
of African restaurants, and they had a great reggae scene and had a great punk scene. But the afternoon drive radio on 88.5 WAMU, my whole childhood, was bluegrass for afternoon drive. And rockabilly never left DC. So I had this really weird palette. And then college radio, it's musical whiplash every 4 hours or 2 hours for everybody's show. And I was like, oh, this is just the way the world is. It's cool. But, there's some people who just locked into their classic rock era, and they're still yacht rockers to this day. And
Mhm.
I don't know. I like it broader, I like it deeper. I like to look around. I appreciate the culture that I come from. I do.
Yeah.
I'd still cook my grandmother's recipes and,
Yeah.
love me some Southern food, but it's not the only thing I eat.
Yep. And I
It's
mean, that's
it's
reflected in what you do too. I mean, you're a documentary film guy, and you're also a musician.
mhm.
So, and a photographer. I mean, you're all over the place. You're a world traveler.
Yeah.
Um,
I enjoy I somebody asked me like, oh, what do you think matters most in photography? And you can learn the tech. The tech is easy. The tech doesn't change that much. you know
yeah.
a lens is analogous to the human eye. Light passes through a hole in the middle, like your iris, your pupil. It's a diaphragm or an aperture in any camera lens, and it has an effect on where it's in focus in the back, and has different characteristics, and you can learn all that stuff.
Yeah.
It may not be the easiest to apply, but I think anybody can learn it if it's taught
Mhm.
well. The rest of it is the art of paying attention and making decisions in the moment, especially when you're doing documentary, especially when you're doing street photography, because you don't have your big crew, you don't have all your lights, you don't have all your lighting modifiers. I remember shooting in Haiti, having to make a decision where it was on mini DV, which didn't have this extended dynamic latitude that we have now, where the whites would blow out and the blacks would block up, because you only had so many f-stops of latitude, right? So you had to make a decision. Like, I have a very dark-skinned child I'm shooting who has polio, and I'm there to shoot for this polio documentary called The Last Child, the Global Race to End Polio. And the mom put him in a white shirt, and he's got this dark skin, and she
Yeah.
sets him down right when a shadow cuts across him. So his dark face is in the shadow, his shirt is blooming white, but behind him in the shadow, there's a
Mhm.
woman washing clothes by hand and a man repairing a bicycle in the shade. And I'm like, how am I going to expose for this? What do I want to,
Yeah.
what do I
Yeah.
want the audience to understand about this right now? On the one hand,
Mhm.
what's the story, and what's the technical limitation of the camera format that I'm shooting? And I got to make a decision like that, that is not the cultural point of view of a 6 foot plus tall, huge white American. I
Yeah.
want to put that guy in Iowa who doesn't know this world, who didn't come on that trip. I want to put him down in that child's eye line and get him to understand the experience of that. So the cultural, artistic, technical ability and understanding and making that decision in that moment, it may not be mountain climbing, it's not life or death, but you can absolutely fuck all that up by a wrong choice in that moment. And I like that high stakes kind of thing. And when you do it enough, coming back and shooting in a studio is easy. You get second takes. You get a professional who hits their marks. I didn't know, that kid's brother was going to pick him up and run around the corner, or a goat was going to come into the shot. It's that, that ability to understand, like, I can't control this environment. This is
Yeah.
how this is, and I just got to roll with it and still come home
Yeah.
with something useful. That's an interesting skill for me. Um,
I feel like
the
that's got to
downs
be like so much more exciting than being in a studio too.
I just shot a short film recently, and it's the first one I've done in a while, and it was black and white and highly stylized, and I had an absolute blast lighting
Really?
that stuff. Yeah, it was so much fun. The images look so good.
Okay.
I'm really looking forward to this director taking it out on the festival circuit,
Mm.
and because I haven't done that in a while, it was such a thrill again to do
Yeah,
that.
I'm sure.
Um, but you know, the stakes weren't that high. I mean, I've shot in places where I've been at gunpoint, like not
Really?
not like, oh, the National Guard is, going to give you an escort. Like, there's a civil war in Cote d'Ivoire, and this group that you just drove into, you don't know whose side they're on, and they send over a child soldier who wants to shake you down for your camera gear. And it's not a test of you, it's a test of the child soldier by the militia guys. So, yeah, those kind of situations, I don't know what the hell's in my background to make me
Yeah.
calm in those moments. I was a pole vaulter in high school and college. I did decathlon. I did a whole bunch of different events. I've ridden a motorcycle most of my life. Maybe there's some adrenaline junkie stuff there, or
Mm.
adrenaline suppression when stuff goes crazy. But I generally don't freak out in
Yeah.
moments when maybe I should. I I, I like those stories, but with the caveat that you want to be the guy the stories are you want to come home and be the guy who tells a story, not the guy, the dead guy the stories are told about, or the guy
Yeah.
who's in prison
Yep.
the stories are told about.
Yep. Yep. 100%. Yeah. Well, because you want to be that old person, right? That's telling stories.
Old and
You want to
old and
grow
full
old
of
enough to be
stories.
there.
I mean,
Um.
I'm sure there'll be people around who don't want to hear these stories either. Like, people get bored with old people for some reason, even though they got the cool stories.
Yep. They do. Um. I was gonna ask you about Naked and Afraid, but I guess I mean, to be honest, it sounds like you've done a lot. You've done a lot of you've done a lot of stuff other than just walking through the woods.
Yeah, Naked
Um,
and Afraid was fun. I did the first
it
four
was.
seasons of XL. Yeah, I had a blast. It was, people ask, oh, how real is that show? And it's like, one of the guys that we shot, who was 25-year Army Ranger combat veteran survival school trainer, he lost 73 pounds in 40 days.
Wow.
Colombia was the hottest place I've ever been. It was 126 degrees.
Shoot, they go
Um,
to Colombia for that?
yeah. Oh yeah, I was in Colombia, I was in Ecuador, I was in South Africa twice on those 4 seasons.
Shoot, I was
Um,
thinking they just went like just like in the North American forest or something and like tried to survive.
no, they've done Philippines, they've done Croatia, they've done, I think they did, um, where else, man? A lot of Africa. I think they did Botswana. I think they did Australia once, you know.
You got to be
Um,
pretty fit to even follow them through, right? Because you're probably walking with your camera
yeah,
in the jungle or the woods.
I'm big, but I have pretty good stamina. But it is physically taxing, no doubt about it. Um, they you go where they go because you got to film what they do, and sometimes you're filming just because it's a safety thing. You know, you can't just let them go on their own all the time.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, man, you get this big booklet at the beginning that tells you about all the local, critters to watch out for. And uh, I had this one AC, which is a camera assistant. He's a big guy. He's like 6'5". He's huge, right? And he had a terrible allergy to peanuts. And you have to list all your stuff you're allergic to, any medications you're on for liability, for the medic, and all that stuff. And he flipped his salad over one day at lunch and went, "It's fucking peanuts here." And he said to the medic, he's like, "I need an EpiPen right now." And the guy's like, "Why?" He goes, "Because in 2 minutes, I won't be able to finish a sentence." So I had to hit him with the EpiPen and save his life. And,
Mhm.
there's another time where, another cameraman and I were closing up for the night, and you turn on infrared cameras so that they have uh, footage of what they do all night. And especially, sometimes big cats are coming by, sometimes somebody's sleepwalking, or sometimes a structure they built collapses, or it rains all night and you need that footage. And So we button up the the IR recording packs
Yep.
and the audio packs, and we both get immediately stung by some brown hornet, right? So turn on the headlamps and they're
Oh boy.
swarming. We're like, oh
Yeah.
shit, let's get out of here. And so me and this guy Danny, it's probably half-mile walk back to base camp where there's a medic and there's somebody with production there all night for legal, right? um, and they've got a vehicle and they've got a satellite phone. It's all, for liability and safety. I'm not giving away any trade secrets here. It's, somebody gets really, really injured, they need to be
Yep.
medevaced out, you got to do it. It's still a TV show. Nobody wants to really see anybody die for entertainment.
Yeah. Yeah.
This
It's
is
not the
not.
Hunger Games.
Yeah, it's not the Hunger Games, not the Colosseum in Rome. So I'm on the phone, on my walkie-talkie going, hey medic, start walking to the med line, walking to the tree line. We're coming out of the jungle. Danny got stung by something. He's not doing too well. And so I take my camel back and I'm like, here, drink as much water as you can to dilute whatever's in your body. And he literally couldn't walk by the time we hit the tree line. So they had hit him with this shot and that shot. And I have a hairy chest, so I didn't get stung as deep. They just gave me an ice cube to put on it. But that's how my fellow cameraman found out that he was allergic to those brown hornets. And there's tick bite fever and extreme heat, like Colombia. That was the strangest landscape. Like Los Llanos Orientales, the eastern plains, right? It was a town called Puerto de Carreño, is a fishing village, and it was closed for several years to outsiders because of the narco traffic. So
Okay.
now there's a naval station on the Orinoco River that separates Colombia from Venezuela. And so it's opened up again. There's still some narco stuff there, but we weren't in any real danger. The You would have these broad African style savannas where they're so big, grasslands, you couldn't even see over them. And I'm talking like riding in the back of a pickup truck being elevated, you can't see over them. They're that big. And then out of the middle of nowhere, there's giant black rock formations called tepui, and they're volcanic rock. So they absorb heat all day. And I would put my hand on it like 9 o'clock at night, and I'd have to
It's
pull my
really
hand
hot.
back. Yeah. Like it wasn't like, oh, it
Wow.
was warm. It's like, damn, it's still hot. You could smell your
Wow.
boots starting to melt on black rocks. And so if you took your camera and aimed like across a 2 acre, 3 acre piece of land, you could see the caloric waves, the heat shimmers coming off of the black volcanic rock. But then there would be, like 20-meter high jungle canopy. And I was like, why is that there? And you go in like 50 yards into the woods, and there's a spring fed creek you could drink right out of the creek. Some of the pools had piranha in them, which is interesting. But you
Yeah.
could drink water right out of the creek, and that fed the jungle. So it's like savannah, 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 whoop, jungle. And you're in there just steaming with the humidity, but out there it was this dry savannah with red dust, like I was in back in West Africa. And
Wow.
it's just fascinating, like to see the ties between stuff. And
Yeah.
my dad asked me one time, last years of his life, he's like, why do you like to go all these places? I was like, because you
Yeah.
guys got National Geographic when I was a kid. I was like, I was reading all that stuff. What do you expect me to do? Forget it? I was like, I wanted to go see what was out there. I still do. Shit, I wish I could live a lot longer so I could see more of it or win the
Yeah. It
lottery.
sounds like film has been kind of your gateway to go see the world and see people's stories, and it's been kind of this recurrent blessing in your life
It
in that sort of way.
documentary, yeah, to go back and forth between it is, like
Mm.
this documentary I'm doing now, it's about water in
Yeah.
in the West. And I was just up at the Central Sierra Snow Lab. And
Yeah.
you
You're
know
in Utah, right?
I was in Utah, I was in Arizona, I was in Nevada, I was in
Wow.
California. And when I was at the Central Sierra Snow Lab, the guy gave me this. It was such a great talking point. I said, how important is the snow lab to California's water supply? And he said, well, think of the Sierra snowpack as an inverted reservoir. It's like, oh, that's brilliant. He goes, and it's free. You don't have to build any dams. You
Yeah.
don't have to build any pipeways. You don't have to build any canals. It flows. I was like, ah. I said, what threatens it? And he goes, burning fossil fuels. I was like, those are great talking points. Those are great. And I was
Yeah.
like, ah, I just have this new understanding of how important that is in a
Yeah.
soundbite. There's a guy I want to get for the film. He's given me permission to use some quotes from his book, a guy named Craig Childs out of Colorado.
Okay.
Fascinating dude, man. He's a naturalist, he's an author, he's a brilliant writer. And when he was young, he was living kind of the dirtbag, live out of his truck hiker lifestyle. And he found these maps by a Jesuit priest named Father Junipero Serra. And no, was it Sarah? No, sorry. That's the guy who did the missions along California's coast.
Okay.
Sorry, it was Eusebio Kino was this priest name. In like 1683, he made these maps. But to back up a little bit, have you ever heard California's seasonal cuisine referred to as Cal Med cuisine, like California Mediterranean?
I haven't heard that, but I've
It,
had some Mediterranean food in California before.
mm-hmm. You know, I mean, we have grapes here, right? And that's, you
Mhm.
know, France and Mediterranean, Greece and other climates. And we
Yep.
have, you know, we have areas that are really watered, but we have areas that are also arid as hell, the desert. So, you know, this is not Scotland or Wales or,
Yep.
you know, Ireland or England. And it wasn't colonized by those people. It was
Yep.
colonized by the Spanish. And the Spanish, like you've heard of spaghetti westerns, right?
Hmm.
Italian director shooting
Yep.
in Spain
Yep.
and it looks like the American West. They understood this landscape because it was similar to Spain.
Hmm.
And when I was shooting Naked and Afraid, the survivalists would say, well, if you're stuck in a survival situation, go downhill because water flows downhill. You walk
Yep.
downhill, you'll find water. True, except for the desert, because what you find in the desert is sand and where water ran out into the sand because the sand doesn't retain it. It's not
Yep.
clay, it's not mud.
Yep.
So there's even a Spanish word for dry creek or dry river. It's arroyo. And we have a freeway here called the Arroyo Seco Freeway. And it means dry creek freeway. So uh, Eusebio Kino went around mapping water sources in like tanks and elevation and
Wow.
depressions where there's a rock bottom, where and so Craig Childs went out with these maps from 1683 and found these waters and mapped their existence in, you know, late 90s, early 2000s, and how much water was in them. And he saw things like springs that only flowed at night but still had fish in them because it was an underground spring, underground river. There's a river, uh, Death Valley, like flows from Nevada into the Death Valley area. It's the Amargosa River. Good chunk of it's underground. It's an underwater river. Um,
Wow.
and and it's, you know,
So
if you're going to study,
it's similar to an aquifer, but it's kind of
it's
like
above
it's
ground for
further
a while.
above
Yeah,
ground.
yeah, and if there's enough rain, there'll be places where it's typically underground. It'll come up, and you
Interesting.
know, yeah, like there's the whole notion of water is different out here from where I grew up. There aren't that many estuaries on the West Coast. There aren't that
Yep.
many, you know, flat water paddles. I have a canoe and a kayak, and I love to do that stuff, but I got to go a distance to find that kind of flat water.
Yeah, to find like a
Um,
lake or something.
yeah, but it's you know, so he wrote this sentence that changed everything. I was camping one time and I was reading his book and I was camped by a wash and I was like, I really hope it doesn't rain anywhere and there's no flash
Yep.
flood coming down this wash, but it's a pretty peaceful place. But he wrote this sentence, one sentence that says the desert serves one purpose, to move water. And I was kind of looking around, I was like, holy shit, everything here is shaped by water, literally. You know, you fly over and you see alluvial fans and you see canyons and you see erosion. And you're like, everything here is shaped by water. And people
Yeah.
say, oh, it's the wind erosion. It's like, man, you could take sandpaper for a billion years and be scrubbing away at the rock, and you're not shaping anything. It's the
Yeah.
water. And
Yeah.
I was like, oh,
Yeah. I think
oh,
like the Sahara Desert used to have a ton of water too,
yeah, it used to
a
be
long time
green.
ago.
Yep.
Yeah.
You know, one of the great discoveries of the future is going to be what's under the sands, I think,
Yeah.
what's preserved, if anything. I mean, but um, I was like, oh, wow. Now I get the desert. I understand this place. And, everywhere you walk in the desert is the trace of water. You're walking in the path of water. It's just not there right then. And
Yeah.
they're whole rivers that only exist during the rainy season and to, a lot of force and a lot of depth. But, I could talk about the water issue for days because I just find it fascinating.
Yeah. And well, I mean, I think it's ironic, but it's also kind of symbolic that the place that we think is the driest is also a place that's formed by water, right?
Exactly
So
right.
that's it's something very ironic there, and I feel like there's lots of things in life where um something that you think is dark or something that you think is light, it also has like those opposite components in it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. You ever read The Little Prince when you were a kid by
No.
Antoine? Read it as an adult. I think you'll like it.
Okay.
Author's name Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, and he was a French pilot and author. He was a French author who flew. He flew in Argentina. He flew in West Africa.
Okay.
He did mail deliveries. He was shot down in World War II. He was an actual pilot. Um, but The Little Prince is fascinating. He said, and there's a line in it. It's like he's in the desert. His plane has crashed, and he's visited by this little prince from the stars, right?
Yeah.
But he said the magic of the desert or the values of the desert is that somewhere within it lies a well. If you want to study water, the importance of water, don't go to the wet places. That's only part of the
Yeah.
story. Go to the dry places.
Yeah. Have you seen Dune?
I haven't. I was waiting to see both of them.
Gosh, the both spectacular movies. The second one was absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
like I thought everyone was overhyping it, like, oh, best sci-fi movie ever, but it was a spectacular film. Um, but in the movie, the people who live on that desert planet, they practically worship water. Water is something it's something that's sacred to them. They when they meet someone new, a new culture, they'll spit on the ground in front of them like as a sign of respect, right?
Interesting.
So it's an interesting play there, and it's great storytelling where he's showing that these desert people find water so important, whereas people like me who lives by water, I live by a ton of lakes. It
Mhm.
rains a lot, and everything. um, Water isn't something that I don't really appreciate as much um, uh, until I'm in Florida drinking tap water, right? But um,
I think, that's one of the, you know, I guess one of the side effects of civilization and urbanization of water supplies is we don't have to think about it
yeah,
here.
yeah,
That's the job of the water managers. And, the with the drought we've had out here, um,
hmm
I don't want to give away too much from the film yet, but
yeah.
two of the people that I interviewed are paleoclimatologists. And I
Oh, interesting.
and I said, how would you define paleoclimatology? And they said the study of climate change that has already happened. It's like, okay, cool. So you know how you have dendrochronology,
Yeah.
reading tree rings for age. They
hmm
do the same thing with soil samples in marshes and mud flats and alpine lakes in the Sierra where water flows in, but it doesn't flow out. So there's no turbation. You get these layers, and they can read things like if you're taking a core sample from a mud flat in San Francisco Bay, um, they'll tell you things like, oh, that was a look at this layer, that was a drought year because the salt water is much farther up in the
Yep.
protozoa and the different animals are salt. But look at this year, 100 years later, it was a record flood year because everything's fresh water coming down from the
Yep.
Sierra. But there have been droughts in California that have lasted 500 years.
Wow.
And we were in serious trouble until 2 years ago. Uh, the past two winters have saved us for now.
Yep.
But, I went and visited some cliff dwellings and, you know, they didn't have groundwater pumping in reservoirs. They had canals. Most people think of Native Americans as hunter gatherers and don't really think too much beyond that. But outside Phoenix, Arizona, they have canals. They had reservoirs. They managed water. They had to. But a lot of those cliff dwellings were people who were either escaping war and famines due to decreasing food because of droughts,
Yep.
or in some areas like was it Chaco Canyon, that civilization there became authoritarian, was may or may not have been levying taxes, so people were fleeing that. And
Interesting.
one of the guys I had interviewed, his next book is about conflict and water, wars that have been caused over water. And who knows, we could very well be there again. The
Yeah.
climate models are all pretty clear, saying that it's going to flip flop between record drought and record floods. This is just a history thing that is, I
Yeah.
I didn't know anything about it. Is the flood of 1861-62
Yep.
in California. We have the Central Valley. It's 80 miles wide. It's 400 miles long. Um, Produces 50% or more of the country's fruits and vegetables. And last time it flooded was 1861-62, and it floods on average every 150 to 200 years. And so it's 162 years ago. So we're coming
Yep.
up for another flood. We almost got there last year. And the way it works is you get a record Sierra snowpack, and then you get a warm spring rain, a long one, and it melts the snow
Wow.
and it floods in. And we had the reappearance of Tulare Lake out here last year, which is, they called it a ghost lake. It had been diverted, drained, channelized, canalized, and farms are there, and it came back. It used to be the biggest freshwater body of water west of the Mississippi. It was bigger than Lake Tahoe, and it came back. It's since dried up because the canals and the drainage
Yep.
and all that stuff did away with it. But if you think of a politician's life, career politician might be in office 40 years,
Mm-hmm.
but we're now in California alone. I'm not even talking about the 7 states that draw water
Yep.
from the Colorado River, but California alone, we're 39 million people.
Yep.
More people live here than the nation of Canada. And is
Wow.
there an elected leader who is thinking of water in the future on 100 and 500 year long timetables? And if you start building that stuff, your political opponent's going to say you're just wasting money, until a flood comes and absolutely wipes out half of
Yep.
this country's fruits and vegetables in 1 year.
Yep.
So and there's another threat to it. And the thing about making the documentaries is I get to ask all these questions that I'm curious
Yep.
about, and experts
Yeah,
tell
that must
me
be awesome. Right.
it's awesome. I absolutely love it because
Mm.
you don't get the chance to do that much unless you're saying, hey, I'm doing a documentary or I'm doing an article.
Yep.
But so we pump so much groundwater that we now have what's called land subsidence out here,
Mm-hmm.
where the land is sunk because we pump the water out of it. And we're doing groundwater recharging. We're smarter about our water use now. We're, instead of like here in LA, when it rains, we have the concrete LA River, and its job was to send all the water straight out to Long Beach as fast as possible, so it didn't flood and take out downtown LA and neighborhoods. But that didn't recharge any of the groundwater, none of the aquifers. So now we pump water out into backyards by zoning, and it settles down. but it can only settle down so far in some of the farming valley areas because it's a bowl now. It's not flat
Yep.
anymore. And so if the next flood comes, like the city of Sacramento, which is the state capital of California, you can take a tour of old Sacramento because new Sacramento was built above it to keep it from flooding.
Yeah.
Leland Stanford, Stanford University, he was
Mhm.
our governor in 1862. He did a shortened inaugural, rowed his boat to it because the flooding was so high. But by the time his inauguration was done and he rode back to the governor's mansion, he had to enter through the second story window.
Wow.
There are just so many of these stories I want to tell, but to find somebody who wants to fund the damn documentary so that people get
Tough.
a bigger understanding of it. And I've reached out to a couple native communities who don't know me and I'm an outsider. And, I've kind of got to prove to them that I'm not being exploitive or being manipulative, but I want to get their perspective on water. And then one of the groups, you
Yep.
mentioned the sacredness of water in Dune.
Hmm.
One group in Dine, the Navajo language, it translates to our sacred waters.
Hmm.
And they fought against like three big pumping stations that were going to be on their land. And like dams have a timeline. They silt in.
Yep.
Every dam that's ever been built is going to have to be torn down and water moved at some point. But who's planning for that?
No one.
And it's kind of like, how long do I want to stay here? What's going to
Yep.
happen? Do I see another drought within my lifetime? you know but most
Yeah.
people are like, well, there's the tap, there's the toilet, and there's my bottle, you know
Yep.
which means we've succeeded on some level, that you don't have to think this water might make me sick. you know
Yeah, but it won't exist pretty soon is the issue.
yeah.
Um,
When I talk to the paleoclimatologists, and their training is in geology and chemistry
yeah.
and everything else, but I said, yeah, all this change, it took over 100 years to happen. It's really slow and blah, blah, blah. And they just laughed. I said, what? They said, you're talking to geologists. 100 years is nothing. It's a tick
Yep.
of the clock in
Yep.
geological time. That change happened so fast. And I was like, oh, yeah, okay, I get it. We totally changed the hydrology and the morphology of the land.
Yep.
And again, I'm not an expert. I just talked to a lot of them. And, you know, I think that skill set of being able to take it in tons and tons and tons of information and trying to spit it back out into a story that isn't embellished, that just tells it in some kind of way that holds people's attention. Um, that's where I get to test myself.
Yep. And I mean,
Yeah.
you're an expert in talking to experts, right? So,
Yeah, maybe that's my skill set. I get to talk to really smart people, and you know, they humor me.
so before we go, I wanted to ask you about the song that I'm going to play
Mhm.
uh, as the intro to this episode, and that's "The Story So Far."
Mhm.
And there's this quote in there. It says, and I'm not sure if I wrote this down right, but it's, "I swear I never done nothing that Jesus should have died for."
Yeah.
And I wanted to ask you about that. What is your spirituality? What made you write that line, and what made you write the song?
I was born, raised, and confirmed a Virginia Methodist, United Methodist.
Hmm.
I did some time in Catholic church and Catholic school for a while, a couple semesters. Uh, I had an option of, when we took the core curriculum classes in theology, philosophy, and religion, like catechism, you could take it with the academic side, or you could take it with the seminarians. And there was a seminary on campus. It was at Mount St. Mary's in Emmitsburg, Maryland. And so I opted. I was like, well, if I'm going to study this stuff, I'm going to study with the priests because they're the
Yep.
most invested. And there was this great, Irish priest, Father Sullivan, and I would sit there and have drinks and argue theology with him. I won't get too into it, but there's a
Yep.
family history of evangelical stuff that I have very contentious disagreements with, uh,
Hmm.
not the least of which I admit is because how it was presented to me. You
Yeah.
know, um, uh, it's like
A lot of times it's not presented very good,
oh, terrible.
I will
I mean,
say.
and I would go so far as to say that, I mean, I had this exact quote conversation with somebody. They're like, oh, people are rejecting God. I'm out witnessing to them on, this college campus. It's like, they're not rejecting God. They're rejecting you. Don't put that off on God. You're just a shitty salesman. These people
Yeah.
are just trying to go out and blow off some steam after working
Yeah.
hard all week.
Yep.
It,
Exactly.
it's like,
Exactly.
what is the, okay, what is the sin? They're drinking alcohol. Jesus' first public miracle is turning holy water into wine at a wedding feast. Go imagine. It's like, why? Because people need to enjoy themselves. There are chapter and verse about people and their sorrows. Give them drinks. It's
Hmm.
it's there, and I just kind of got really sick of the Reagan era born again evangelical
Hmm.
zealotry, um,
Yep.
and having it rammed down my throat. And
Hmm.
so I was like, I need to study this book so I have more firepower. And I did. And I still read it. Um,
Good.
and I just have, I don't know what the exact percentage is, but I don't know anybody who grew up in Eastern Iowa who said, yeah, Zoroastrianism, that's my religion. I want that.
Hmm.
It's even older than Judaism. It's
Yep.
it's the
It's old.
it's old, and a fire is sacred, which I can totally get with, and it's monotheistic before Judaism. Uh, and that's a long way to say that most people gravitate towards religions they're introduced to in their local environment.
Hmm.
I don't know a whole lot of people who aren't from anywhere near India who are Jains, for example.
Yep.
You know, there's a Sikh temple right by me. It's the oldest Sikh
Hmm.
temple in the US after partition, and it's
Yep.
less than a half a mile from where I live. I'm not a Sikh, but they open up for buffets and to introduce you. Hey, this is what Sikhism is about. A very good friend of mine spent a lot of time in Ethiopia, and I met him in Catholic school, and he is a practicing Ethiopian Orthodox church member now. I just think that people oversell their idea of the truth, and
Yep.
that there's the only truth is theirs. I mean, there's an old saying amongst atheists. It's a quick disarming of
Yep.
people who are, I can't believe you don't believe in blah blah. And it's like, well, here's this thing: you've rejected every religion but yours, right? Like, well, yeah,
Yeah.
yours.
Yeah.
I,
That was my biggest. That's why I walked away from atheism. Because I realized how much of a religion it really was, where
it
all
can
these
be, yeah,
people weren't believing, like all these people, their disbelief in God was their belief system. Like that was their,
yeah, it can be. They can make an
yep,
orthodoxy and a militancy out of that.
yep,
But uh, I'm definitely a skeptic, a non-believer, agnostic, if that's a more
yep,
comfortable phrase. But
mm,
the thing I learned in studying the atheists is, um, you say to a believer, well, you've rejected every religion but yours, right? Yes.
yep.
I've just rejected one more. That's it. That is literally it. And
Yep,
everybody I've ever talked to who's a serious believer, um, they say at a certain point, it's never going to make logic if logic is how you're looking
yep.
to
If
define the
logic's how
world.
you're looking.
Yeah, you have to make a leap of faith. And I've made the leap of faith, tried to make the leap of faith in the past, and I just felt fake. I was like,
Mm,
I fundamentally, at some level, do not believe the core of this message. I think
yep.
Jesus is an interesting guy. I think Buddha was an interesting guy.
Mm,
Do I think Jesus is born to a virgin mother? No. Do I think that he was resurrected? No, I don't. Do I think Buddha was born from the side of his mother? What do these religious authors have against vaginas and uteruses? This is weird. And
Yeah.
and you start connecting the dots to all that stuff, and reading about, this figure in religious history who was resurrected and this, that, and the other. And it's like, this is the same,
Yeah.
like creation type myths repeating themselves. And
But there's still a
and
message behind it, right?
there is, but I think to me, the message is accountability for your time on Earth.
Mm.
I
Yeah.
won a genetic socioeconomic lottery by being born in the time I was, to the parents I was, to the
Mm.
income they had, to the opportunities that
Yeah.
I've had. I didn't have anything to do with it. I'm trying to maximize my,
Yeah.
return on gifts, you know, genetic ability, whatever stuff that's just inherent that I didn't really have anything to do with. Um, but when people would sit there and like cross themselves before making a free throw in a high school basketball game, and I'm like, Jesus doesn't give a shit that you fumbled. It's like I've been to these areas where
Yeah.
I'm just like, don't pray for me. Pray for those people. They've got it much worse.
Yeah.
I remember when my mom and I had these discussions when she was diagnosed with cancer at 67. She lived to be 88. The surgeries was a success. But I had recently come back from 3 trips in West Africa, where in sub-Saharan Africa, the life expectancy was 37. And I was already pushing 37 at that age. And I was like, how can you talk about being blessed and still know that those people? It's like, do not ever, if you're going to pray and you really want it to make an impact, I'm doing fine. If the biggest
Yeah.
concern in your life is my afterlife, you know, let me deal with that. And I know Pascal's wager where, there's no harm done, that if you believe and you get to the afterlife, you get the afterlife because you believe. If you don't, it's eternal damnation and suffering, and the weeping, wailing, gnashing of the teeth of hell. And yeah, I get it. But this life, as far as anybody can tell, is the only one we have. It's the only chance we've got. And I think it matters. And I think to deny that it matters, um, is really, I think it's insane, because I mean, I never understood why in right wing Jesus Incorporated American evangelical circles, why environmentalism never caught on.
Yeah.
Because it's hippie bullshit to them. It's
Yeah.
Earth Day stuff. And by the way, happy Earth Day. you know
Hey,
and
happy birthday.
people are like, Earth Day, why would you celebrate that? It's like, because there's no planet B at the moment for us. This is where we live.
But also, you
um
got to make this planet heaven, right? You got to make your life heaven, and I think that's kind of the point of a lot of these messages here. It's not about dying and going to heaven. It's about making this life now
See,
heaven.
I think that's what's lost. I mean, I'm trying to make the most of this life,
Yeah.
for better or worse.
Mhm.
There may be things I do that make things horrible for people. I'm trying to be conscious of it.
Yeah.
Um, but there are bluegrass songs that say flat out, "This world is not my home." You know, People will take an anti-climate change stance based on their very American, very Jesus Incorporated. And I do say Jesus Incorporated because it is a money-making thing. You look at Joel Osteen, and I'm like, really? That guy's going to heaven? Sure, sure. What about, that ain't no foot
Yeah.
washing Jesus. That is no, what happened to, was it Matthew 12 through 13? It's easier for a camel to fit through the eye of a needle than it is for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. Um, we seem to have forgotten all of that. And
Yeah.
people act like heaven and hell are real places. There's a great, and I think you would enjoy this because you think on this level.
Yeah.
There's This American Life on NPR, Ira
Yeah.
Glass. It's an There's 2 things to listen to. It's called American Heretic is the episode. And one has Julia Sweeney doing part of her one-woman show, I think called God Said Ha. And that's fascinating. But the other one is, and this guy just died last year is Bishop Carlton Pearson, and he is responsible for bringing Bishop T.D. Jakes onto the megachurch scene, right? And Carlton Pearson talked about how he literally hears the voice of God speaking to him. And he's got his son or his grandson on his knee. It's 1994.
Yep.
He's watching the Tutsis in Rwanda come back to their villages after being massacred, by the Hutus. And the voice of God that he hears as a preacher of this 20,000 member megachurch, the voice says to him, "That's hell." He goes, "What do you mean, Lord? Hell's a real place." He goes, "If that's not hell, what is?" And so he
Wow.
started changing his message, and he lost his congregation. He lost his church. He was labeled a heretic by T.D. Jakes, who he brought forth, and he started preaching a more inclusive gospel. I think he partnered up with Agape International Church. And his thing was, Jesus said, what were his words? "It is done." And he's like, I don't even have to believe in Jesus. It's done. Because if your blood sacrifice, if you're laying down your life for the sins of humanity, doesn't include all the sinners, what was the fucking point? And he said, you don't have to believe in Jesus. It is done. So what is all this, like during COVID, all these churches were going crazy about, we can't, come together. It's like, you want the collection plate.
Mm-hmm.
Jesus said, wherever I'm in your heart, there is the church. Wherever you gather in my name, there's a church. You can do that in your living room. You don't have to be in a mega church. You don't have to be anywhere near Joel Osteen. And it's like,
and that was your quote in your other song. I forget the name of it. It was called Secular Heim, and you said
like a
somewhere along the lines of God is within, not above.
Yeah, pretty much. And I mean, that's true to a lot of teachings I've read. And I'm not done with Christianity. I pay attention to it. I just think we've lost our way in America. And
we've lost our way in a lot of things.
Sure. I just don't think anybody's ever going to listen to me. I'm not trying to win any converts. Somebody said something where I talk a lot at my shows when I play in between songs. And I said something once and somebody goes, "Preach it." And I said, "No, I don't preach, but I do testify." Those are different things.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing too. It's like, how is Bob Dylan writing Every Grain of Sand not gospel?
Yeah.
Because it's for a secular audience, because it's released by a record company. I mean, to me, that should be a book. But, there's the canonical gospels and the apocryphal gospels and the synoptics. And, it's not for a lack of studying. It's not for a lack of interest. But if I were to drop dead tomorrow, and I don't want to, I'm enjoying living, I'm okay. This has been a good life, man. There's plenty to bitch about. There's always stuff to bitch about, but in the best bitching, you're trying to make something better. As long as you have an eye on, why. But I just like, save your prayers for someone who needs them. I'm really okay. Pretty happy.
Awesome. Well, we'll end it there. I think that's a good note. I appreciate you coming on the podcast. That was awesome. You have so much, like you have so much interesting stuff to say. I feel like I'd have to have you on like 3 more times just to.
Oh, jeez.
But thanks so much for coming on.
That's a very polite way to tell me I talk a lot, but
no, not at all. Not at all. Not enough.
But thank you. I hope people listen to your podcast, because I mean, Michael Hayes is one of the most interesting guys I know, and I wish more people knew about what he was doing with his slow cinema, and the small films that he makes that the Hollywood cheeseburger machine is never really going to get out in front of anybody. But they're definitely interesting ways of looking at the world. And
Yeah.
you know, I appreciate that this podcast exists. Thank you.
Oh, where can people find you?
Oh yeah, ChristopherLockett.com.
ChristopherLockett.com.
Yeah. And I'm on Instagram as Christopher Lockett. I'm on
Sweet.
Twitter/X as Hey Lockett. But yeah, that's it. I post a lot of stuff on Instagram because
Sweet. I'll tag you in one of my reels that I'll post
okay,
from this.
okay, cool. And yeah,
Sweet.
just give me a heads up whenever it goes live, and I'll share it with some people.
Awesome. And thanks everybody for listening. And we'll check back with you later.